Can someone tell me if I'm audible?
Hi, yes, you are. A little bit more louder,
Okay, am I audible now?
better.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Let me know when to start.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Pritam, please on the screen sharing.
1 minute, 1 minute. Now try.
Yeah, it works.
Okay.
Is this visible?
Yes, yes, yes.
कौन सा कर रहे हैं यार? हो जाते हैं इधर अपन उड़
Suraj,
Yes, Pritam.
I think we can start.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So is my screen visible to everyone? Students? कोई एक जन reply करो. Any one of you can reply.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So a very good evening. वैसे it's not good evening, it's basically late evening. And I think most of you have just attended one of the brilliant organic chemistry lectures. And I know how much of you guys like organic chemistry, right? So welcome to the father of organic chemistry, that is medicinal chemistry. And we have taken a very interesting topic today, right? Because all of us, the youngsters group, we are very much passionate about heart. Of course, it's for a different reason, but of course, we are very passionate about heart. So we have taken a topic today, which is congestive heart failure, right? So next 1 hour, we'll properly plan our session and we'll talk about congestive heart failure. We'll talk in detail about various drugs, about the medicinal chemistry, but don't worry, I will not bore you guys with that. So let's start with it. Also, until I'm sharing this presentation, I cannot see your chats. So once I start writing on the whiteboard, that is when you can start putting your questions and everything in the chats, or you can put it in the meanwhile and I'll check it out when I start writing on the whiteboard. All right. So let's start. So before I start with any medicinal chemistry topic as such, I always tell my students that before you start studying medicinal chemistry, because most of you are afraid of it, there are some prerequisites. Okay. If you follow these and if you are perfect with these prerequisites, medicinal chemistry will go very nice and very smooth for you guys, right? So what are these prerequisites that I'm talking about? So before you actually start medicinal chemistry studying of any specific topic, you should be very well aware of the physiology part. Okay, suppose today we are talking about congestive heart failure, so you are expected to know the physiology of the human heart. Okay, of course we cannot take entire of these 4 things in a 1 hour session. I'm so sorry, but this is what is expected out of you since you are third year or final year B Farm students. Okay, you are into senior years now, so you are expected to know the physiology of human heart. Then you are expected to know the pathophysiology. What is the condition? What is the normal physiology? What happens in a pathological condition? We are expected to know the pathophysiology, the various things which are affected, because you have to design drugs or you have to understand what drugs are working where. And for that, these 2 things, okay, physiology and pathophysiology is very important. Next is pharmacology. Now, pharmacology, why it is important, I don't have to tell you guys, right? Because this is where your actual study of drugs comes into picture, right? So pharmacology is important. Once you understand these 3 things, okay, understanding medicine would not be a challenge or would not be a problem for you guys. Now, where does this comes into picture? Okay, so most of you are afraid of medicinal chemistry only just because you look at the structure of the particular drug molecule and you get afraid of it. Okay, leave the synthesis part aside, you are afraid of the structure itself. So when it comes to synthesis, it's a different story altogether, right? And that is where your organic chemistry knowledge comes in picture. If you are very well versed with your organic chemistry topics and concepts, you can very easily draw the structures, not just the structures, you can also very easily write the synthesis. You can actually plan out the synthesis on your own just by looking at the functional group. So that is why functional group organic chemistry is very important, and that is why it is also placed in your earlier years. So it's it's a flow. Until you know these things properly, these things are going to trouble you definitely. Okay, so if these prerequisites are being well satisfied with you guys, I don't think you will have a problem studying medicinal chemistry. Okay. So coming to today's topic, congestive heart failure, there cannot be a better representation of what congestive heart failure is than this pic right here. Okay, as you can properly see over here, the heart is so much tired, right? So heart ka kaam kya hai? What is its function? To pump out the blood, to give the required blood, what is the demand of the body, to various organs, various tissues and stuff, right? But doing that, it's a muscular organ, we know that it contracts and it relaxes, and there is a refractory period where it rests as well, right? But imagine if the load on heart is too much, that it is not getting time to relax, it is just contracting relaxing, too much. After some point of time, it gets fatigued. It's as simple as if I tell you to run for a very long time, right? You get fatigued, you get tired. The same is the condition with the myocardial muscle cells, because heart is also a myocardial organ, right? We call it myocardium. and the cells or the tissues in the heart are called as myocardial cells and myocardial tissues. So after pumping so much of blood and after having so much of load, after some specific time it gets tired, and when it gets tired, at some point of time it gives up. So when it gives up, it is very dangerous situation, right? Because it has to continuously pump the blood. You can need hair, the body has need, right? So this is a perfect representation of what congestive heart failure is. Now see, our body is amazing, okay? So it's not like today afternoon you took something and evening may you get a congestive heart failure. It is not like that, okay? So this is a chronic condition, okay? It is chronic. It happens, something happens for years, and then the condition comes into picture. And a person will not only suffer from heart failure. It will be a very rare circumstance where it is only a heart failure. Most of the times it is an underlying disease, okay? So this problem is due to a underlying disease. So उस disease के pathophysiology में something happened due to which congestive heart failure wala circumstances has arrived, okay? And in a very layman term, if I want to put congestive heart failure, it is nothing but the inability of the heart to pump enough blood. It's a very layman definition. It's not a proper disease definition. It's a very layman definition. uh, just a minute. You're not audible. Am I not audible, people? Twinkle Patel has said you're not audible. Can someone tell me if I'm audible or not?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yeah, okay, Twinkle, I am audible. Please check your connection once. Shruti, I missed the organic chemistry lecture. Please do send the recording if possible. Yes, Shruti, you can coordinate with the host. I'd like to request the recording for organic lecture as well. Preetham, please make a note of these chats. I'll answer them later on.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So coming back to congestive heart failure. So as I said, in layman term, it is nothing but the inability of the heart to pump enough blood. Now there is demand. The demand has not stopped, but now heart is tired. It cannot pump. Okay. It is also an imbalance in the demand and supply. All right. This concept, the concept of preload and afterload. I'm sorry. Okay, this is not new to you. This is what you study in physiology. That is why I said understanding of physiology is very important. So if anyone has a problem with preload and afterload, I'll come in the next slides what preload and afterload is, but it's in a very layman term. Preload is basically the amount of blood which enters the heart, whereas afterload is the amount of blood which remains in the heart after it has pumped. Some amount, there is some residual blood always, right? Now more preload and more afterload, both is a problem, and our stroke volume depends highly on these two factors, and there is a huge imbalance in these two factors when we talk about heart failure. Okay, I have made these introductory slides only so that to give you a fresh up brush up your memory of what heart failure is, so that when we talk about drugs you're not blank completely. Okay, now this heart failure can be of two different types. Okay, one is diastolic and the other one is systolic. So heart failure can be due to diastolic changes and due to systolic changes. See, we talk about congestion, we travel a lot in various cities, and people who are from Bangalore or Mumbai or these metro cities, we know what congestion is. Traffic congestion, right? Basically it's like a blockage. Okay, so too much of traffic, if it is there, it entirely blocks the way, and that is what congestion is basically. Similar kind of thing may happen in the heart as well. So you can imagine congestion here means whatever volume of the heart, whatever volume of atria or ventricle we are talking about, if it is already filled, if it is already filled with something, it can be blood, it can be anything else. If it is pre-filled, okay, there is no volume left for the incoming, that is preload. There is no volume left for the incoming blood, and there is, if there is more of volume which is left in the heart after pumping, so body is not getting enough supply. Abhi ventricle ka volume also decreases because there is already afterload much more, right? So what happens in diastolic and systolic is, in case of diastolic heart failure, the heart is not able to fill properly, okay, whereas in case of systolic heart failure, the heart is not able to pump the blood properly. So in this case, your afterload, okay, your afterload will be very high. Okay, whereas in here, in case of where the heart is not filling properly, the preload will be high because body will try to make up. Your preload will increase based on the negative feedback, right? So these are two major types of heart failures which are known, categorized, right? Now whenever there is a heart failure, of course we have body's natural feedback mechanisms which tries to correct whatever problem is going on, right? This particular image has been taken by Tripathi, so you can see this in the Tripathi as well, right? So since heart is not able to pump the blood, this is one scenario, the cardiac output will be reduced. You know this thing, right? Now what body does, it will try some mechanisms, compensatory mechanisms. Okay, it will try, stimulating the your beta system, the adrenergic system, right? Sympathetic stimulation, sympathetic nervous system. Okay, epinephrine, norepinephrine will come into picture. They will try to increase the contractility of the heart, right? Then there will be RAS activation, because since cardiac output is decreased, there will be decrease in the blood pressure. So there will be RAS activation, right? So all of these things lead to ventricular remodeling. Now see, these things are good. Okay, you will say, sir, this is good. Heart is not able to pump. These are compensated mechanisms. Then why do we have drugs which will block these mechanisms? You can see here the cross. Okay, it says beta blocker. We are giving a beta blocker for heart failure. Here RAS activation, we are giving ACE inhibitors, angiotensin receptor blockers. So even if it is compensatory mechanisms, why are we giving this? Think on this when we write it on the whiteboard, when we discuss the drugs. I'll ask this question again to you guys. Tab tak you can think over it. Why the compensatory mechanisms are the one that we are blocking? Okay. Now, so when we talk about the natural feedback mechanisms, okay, what actually happens? So body will first activate the RAS system, because there is decreased cardiac output. There will be definitely decreased blood pressure, and as a normal natural phenomena, body will activate this RAS system, renin angiotensin aldosterone system. This is a representation of this RAS system, right? This kind end point is nothing but angiotensin 2 comes in picture, right? Angiotensin 2 has multiple rows, one of which is vasoconstriction altogether, which increases the blood pressure, and another role is it also does aldosterone agonist type of function, right? And the next is adrenergic stimulation, which I just spoke about a while back. Okay, so these two things immediately the body will try to do when body thinks that something is not working properly. Okay, so if you talk about treatment strategy for this congestive heart failure, the first and the most important thing that you should do is you should correct the underlying condition. Suppose if the patient is diabetic, okay, and this congestive heart failure is secondary to that diabetes, so you should start the person first on anti-diabetic treatment. Suppose if the patient is hypertensive, okay, so start treating hypertension first, give antihypertensives first. Okay, because I told you heart failure, congestive heart failure is generally secondary to different disease conditions. So if you correct the primary disease, this will automatically be taken care of by your body itself. Okay, so treat the underlying condition first, and this is very, very important. This is where another class of drugs, that is the diuretics, come in picture. You have to control the sodium and water intake. Why? Okay, why? So imagine that this is your human heart, okay, divided into 4 chambers. In any of the situation, either if it is preload is more or afterload is more, what happens is there is too much of accumulation of fluid. There is accumulation of fluids. Okay, because heart is not able to pump, so either the blood is here too much, it is filling, and where will this fluid go when there is no space? It will go first in the pulmonary circulation. So you will definitely see pulmonary edema, right? So whenever a person has a condition of heart failure, congestive heart failure, you have to control the sodium and water intake. This has to be done before you start with any of the medication. These two things have to be done, have to be taken into consideration, right? Now, coming back to the various drug classes for CHF. So the first foremost is you try to decrease the blood pressure, because you can imagine that already heart is under congestion. It is not able to fulfill the supply and demand wala thing. There is an imbalance. Definitely there will be a lot decrease in the blood pressure due to decrease in cardiac output, right? There will be decrease in cardiac output, and but obvious there will be decrease in blood pressure, right? Now this decrease in blood pressure will activate renin system, and it will secrete angiotensin 2. This will cause vasoconstriction. It will lead to increase of blood pressure. Now already heart is compromised. It cannot deal with this right now. Okay, understand this, very important. Already the heart is compromised. It cannot deal with this pressure right now. And therefore we have to release this pressure. And that is why we give vasodilators. Okay, which vasodilators will come to that. Next, you have to increase the contractility. See, there is a problem. What is the problem? That heart is not able to pump enough blood, right? So if we give strength, imagine this like if you watch this amazing cartoon Popeye, right? You give him spinach and immediately he gets power. right? So imagine you giving some kind of drugs which will give power to the heart muscles. So heart will contract nicely and relax nicely, and the entire amount of blood which was accumulated will again start going into circulation. So you increase the contractility of the heart. Now there are two terms which come in picture over here. One is called as chronotropy and one is called as inotropy, right? These two things come in picture over here: positive chronotropy and positive inotropy. And these are drugs which we give for increasing the contractility, right? Now, decreased sympathetic output. Again, we are talking about the beta stimulation, because this is a natural mechanism of the body which will ultimately do what? It will increase the blood pressure, it will increase preload, it will increase cardiac output, right? But these systems will increase this. There is a mediator over here, and the mediator is heart itself, but this is compromised. So this will get hyper stimulated. These all things will continue, but heart is not functioning. Ultimately, it will worsen the situation. And we don't want that. We want to give heart the rest so that it can function nicely. So if this worsens the situation, you have to decrease this sympathetic output. And that is when beta blockers come in picture. All right. And last but not the least, your renin-angiotensin system. I've told you how this will affect, right? So ACE inhibitors, angiotensin receptor blockers, also diuretics. Okay, so these are the focus areas where you should think on, the lines that you should think on if you're talking about drugs. So these are the classes of drugs that you'll be majorly dealing with when you talk about congestive heart failure. Anyone has any doubts so far?
Sir, I have one doubt.
Yeah.
Sir, in the previous page, I did not get how you related the relief of blood pressure to RAS system. I did not
just
get it.
just a minute, just a minute. This one you're talking about?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
the whole pathway.
which point? The first point?
Yes, the first point, sir.
Perfect.
Thank
So I say that you have to decrease the blood pressure. See, what happens is, in congestive heart failure, what is the output in the pathophysiology condition? The output is your body has less of cardiac output, right? It depends on stroke volume and your heart rate, right? But your
Yes,
body
sir.
has less cardiac output. Okay. Now, whenever body has less cardiac output, body ka natural mechanism is what? It will do activation of this, and it will activate your adrenergic system also. And the ultimate goal of these two systems is what? Increasing blood pressure, increasing the liquid or the water load, thereby increasing the cardiac output. This is the goal of these system, right? But they achieve this goal with the help of heart only, na? And here this is compromised. So
Yes.
these will keep aggravating, but heart is not able to bear this pressure. It's already in under congestion. Okay, congestion hai, there is too much of traffic and more vehicles are adding to it. Will it lead to any good? No.
No.
See, if the signal is not working properly, you increase the number of policemen. Will it do any good? No. Right. That is where the other traffic police and the other police also come in picture, and then they start doing it. Right. So you can look at like this is, if this is your road, here is the congestion of various vehicles. Okay. The signal, okay, the signal which controls the traffic is your heart. It is not able to do its work properly due to some problem. That is when the traffic police come in picture. So your traffic police are nothing but the negative feedback mechanism and the secondary messengers of your body. But they are not able to control it because this is very much compromised, and public does not listen to this. Log nahi sunte. People are, very hyper. They are like, "Arey kya ho raha hai? Jaldi khali karo," and stuff like that. They don't listen to the traffic police, and that is where the general police come in picture. And this general police is nothing but the outside help that you do, and nothing but drugs. So is it clear to you now why we want to decrease blood pressure? So that the load on heart decreases. As simple as that.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, perfect. Anyone else? Any doubts so far?
Yes, so the second portion, it is written that increase in contractility, we must increase the contractility. When
Yeah,
we do this, the heart itself is a mediator here also. The contraction will happen in the heart itself.
yeah.
So when its situation is already so much compromised that it's not able to bear the pressure,
Hmm.
so how can it bear the pressure of contracting and working more in a
Understood.
more efficient
Understood.
way?
Understood. Understood. So if you talk about okay, talk about the first line that I said. What is congestive heart failure? It is an inefficiency of heart to pump blood. Now, when I say it is inefficiency of heart, is it inefficiency of heart or is it inefficiency of the heart muscles to contract?
So heart muscles.
Exactly my point. So if you increase the contractility, okay, if you increase the efficiency of heart muscles, will they start contracting normally again and will they get back with the load and everything? Think over it.
Yes, sir.
Understood?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Someone asked about explain the third point again. We'll come to beta blockers when we're discussing the drugs. Okay. I don't want to keep drugs on hold for you guys. It's sub generalized hai. You can find this in book also. But I didn't want to start straight away with drugs because you should understand the underlying principles first and then go to drugs. This is always a better practice too. That's why I said physiology, pathophysiology, pharmacology, and organic chemistry combined study. Then you start with medichem. Okay. That is why it is introduced very late to you in the third year or SEM 5 and SEM 6. Right? So coming to drug classes. Now here are the names of drugs. You can take a screenshot of this particular slide. We'll be discussing these drugs in details. Okay. So the first category of drug is inotropic drugs. Now I introduced you to two terms, chronotropy and inotropy. Chronotropy is where you increase the heart rate. So chronotropy, okay, chronotropy is related to heart rate, whereas inotropy is related to the force of contraction. The force of contraction, and this is what we need to deal with here to a larger extent because we want to increase the efficiency of heart muscles. So we have specific drugs in this class which will increase this force of contraction, that is positive inotropic effect. Okay, which are the drugs? Digoxin, dobutamine, which is a dopamine derivative. Dopamine was used very much primitively, but it is not used today. Amrinone and milrinone is a better class of drug. In fact, today we don't even use digoxin. We use digoxin only in severe cases, very severe cases. We don't use it generally. If we want to give inotropic drugs, we go with amrinone and milrinone, and this is the drug of choice if we want to give an inotropic drug. Okay, so these are the 5 drugs. Then we talk about diuretics. I told you. So diuretics, may you have high ceiling diuretics, that is the loop diuretics, one of which is furosemide. In thiazide, it is not a thiazide, but it is a thiazide-like diuretic called as metolazone. Okay, so these two are the diuretics which we generally use when we talk about congestive heart failure. Now, these diuretics also have a drawback of potassium, right? Loss of high potassium. Okay, so imagine, okay, we will come to this later. We'll come to the effect of digoxin and these diuretics together when we discuss the drugs. Then we have RAS inhibitors. We spoke about RAS inhibitors, right? We have to decrease the RAS inhibitors. So we have ACE inhibitors. See, all the ACE inhibitors end with pril. Okay, ये आप याद रखो. All the ACE inhibitors will end with pril. So the first ACE inhibitor was captopril. Okay, so the name of all ACE inhibitors ends with pril. This is how you can remember. So you have lisinopril and benazepril. इसका spelling थोड़ा error है. There's an error in the spelling. Please correct it. It is benazepril. Okay, so you have lisinopril and you have benazepril, and then you have angiotensin receptor blockers. They are also called as AT1 blockers, angiotensin receptor 1 blockers. Okay, and the name of these ends with sartans. The name of these ends with sartans. So losartan, candesartan, valsartan. See, these are generally anti-hypertensive drugs. You'll study these under hypertensive categories. Okay, in fact, if you have any old person in the house, who's anyone in the house who has a problem of high BP or hypertension problem, if you see their drug or the drug combination, I'm 100% sure there'll be something like this. Telmisartan will be there, or valsartan or candesartan. Some of the sartan will definitely be there because they are the first class drugs for hypertensive patients, right? So these drugs ka kaam will be what? They will decrease blood pressure. We have discussed this in the earlier slide, right? So that is why we are giving these. Okay. Now, vasodilators, again, same, decrease in the blood pressure. Here you have hydrazine, you have isosorbide, you have sodium nitroprusside. We generally don't give this for CHF because this is an emergency medicine only when your blood pressure increases to, you know, very, very high limit. This is an emergency medicine. It is not given generally. Whereas hydrazine, okay, it is a very, very safe medicine. It is also safe in pregnancy. It is also safe in pregnancy. So it is, if there is a pregnant woman, this will be the drug of choice. Okay, hydrazine. Then you talk about beta blockers. We have metoprolol, we have bisoprolol, nebivolol, and carvedilol. In these two are more preferred. Okay, metoprolol and carvedilol. Carvedilol because it has alpha and beta activity both. Okay, there are some places in the heart where there is beta 1 receptors. But when you talk about this vasodilation of blood vessels, your blood vessels have alpha 1 receptors. So you will prefer a candidate who has both alpha and beta activity, and that is where carvedilol comes in picture. All right, so this is a very good beta blocker, carvedilol. Now, and last one is aldosterone antagonist. Now, in diuretics also, you have this class of drug called as potassium sparing diuretics, okay, in which one of the class is aldosterone antagonist. But why I have written it separately is because in severe cases, okay, in very, very severe heart failure cases, when there is no option and they give digoxin, they give this with it. Okay, they don't give any of these loop diuretics, they give spironolactone or eplerenone. All right, I'll tell you why. Okay, when we discuss the mechanism of action, I'll tell you why. Now, one last thing before we start with our blackboard. New York Heart Association, okay, this is a generalized thing that we consider always. So New York Heart Association classifies heart failure into 4 different classes. All right, class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. See, imagine karo, what would happen if a person is suffering from heart failure? What will be a definite symptom that you will see in that person? Okay, the definite symptom would be shortness of breath because of load. There is more load, there is less of activity of the heart, there will be definitely shortness of breath, called as dyspnea. Now, how, you know, when this symptom occurs? So if the symptom is occurring after, you know, too much of work, बहुत ज़्यादा work करने के बाद, when there is too much of exertion, then there is little bit of dyspnea. That is class 1. That is mild HF. Okay, moderate, little bit severe. Third one, very severe. Even while, you know, like normal activity, just very, very normal activity, you will start, the person will start feeling breathlessness. So that is severe HF, very, very severe condition. And this refractory HF, very dangerous. The person is short of breath even at rest, when the body is at rest. Okay, very, very dangerous situation. So New York Heart Association talks about various classes of drugs that you can give in these conditions. So if there is a mild HF case, you give angiotensin receptor blockers or RAS system blockers, and you give diuretics with them. Same is the case with moderate, severe. But in case of last, this, when the person is at rest and still it is not, you know, still it is feeling breathlessness, this is where we don't go with any of these drugs and we go with the inotropic agents, digoxin, dobutamine, and diuretic. I have specifically written potassium sparing over here because I told you we give either spironolactone or we give eplerenone. Okay, so this is as per New York Heart Association. This is what guidelines is being followed by everyone. Right now, anyone has any doubt till here? Because right now we are entering drugs completely. Okay.
Sir, I have a doubt.
Bolo.
Sir, both sodium and potassium are like no just protons, matlab positively charged ions. But why do they have such opposing effects on body fluid volume?
Okay, good question. Let's answer this when we discuss about sodium and potassium. Okay, I'll answer this. Okay,
Okay, sir.
so
Thank you.
let's enter into drugs first, है ना? तो ये टाइप का main, your major aim for today's class is understanding how to draw drug structures and how to deal with these, you know, dangerous structures. आज का main aim ये है. Students, एक बात हमेशा याद रखना, medicinal chemistry में you never have to be afraid of structures. You know why? Because in most of the cases, like 80% of the cases may, the name of the drug will give you an idea of its structure. In at least 70 to 80% of cases may, the name of the drug will give you the idea of the structure. And then there are generalized things that you have to remember. Okay, just generalize 1-2 statement about any drug class. If you remember that, you can perfectly draw the structure. I'll give you a very simple and a crisp example. Since you are all pharma students, you should definitely know the structure of this particular molecule, okay, which has a safety index amazingly. Like in 1 day a 5-gram dose also will not produce toxicity. This is the safety index. Right now, the ones who don't know the structure of paracetamol, you will never forget this structure henceforth. Okay, now look over here. Para, aceta, AM stands for amide, ON stands for all. So you know there is a 2 functional group and the relationship is para. Okay, so this takes care of the all. Okay, now AM stands for amide, NH, C, double bond O. Aceta stands for acetyl group. Acetyl group is nothing but CH3CO. Okay, CH3CO, this entire group together is called as acetyl. Okay, now these are the two functional groups. The relationship between them is para. So para, aceta, aceta is this group. AM stands for amide, CONH link is amide, or you can say AM stands for amine, NH stands for amine. You can remember it your way. And all is OH, all. Simple. Henceforth, you will never forget this structure of paracetamol, right? So never ever be afraid of structures. You can remember each of the structures mostly by its name and the drug class. Okay, and this is what I want to teach you today. Now see, most of the drugs that we discussed today, okay, you will be studying these drugs in detail in different chapters. There'll be a different chapter of diuretics, okay, there'll be a different chapter of antihypertensives, there'll be different chapter of angina, drugs acting on angina, where you study about these hydrolysine and nitrates and isosorbide and stuff, right? So our major aim for today is not covering these. Our major aim of today is covering the cardiac glycosides, because these are the first drugs which were used for CHF. Today we don't use them, we only use them for severe condition because they have very low therapeutic index. I hope you guys know what is therapeutic index, right? The safety margin, it is very low. The safety margin is very low, and therefore we use it. We have reserved it only for very severe and refractory HF. Okay, so our aim for today is to understand these properly. Perfect. Let's start. I'm not giving you a break because it's just a 1 hour session. I don't think there's a need of break, and we started I think 10-15 minutes late. All right, so please bear with me. Galia mat dena, please don't abuse me. Okay. All right, so now coming to cardiac glycosides. Now these cardiac glycosides, I'll directly start with the chemistry of them. Okay, they have two different parts. The drug which comes in these classes, they have two parts. One part is called as a glycon moiety, and the other part is called as glycon moiety. Basically these drugs, they have a sugar part, okay, and they have a non-sugar part. See, when you talk about glycon, you should understand here there will be a sugar part. So the glycon is nothing but the sugar, and the aglycon is the non-sugar portion of your glycoside. All right, so glycon, aglycon. Now what is this aglycon? Okay, aglycon, it is nothing but a steroid backbone moiety, a steroid nucleus. Now what is a steroid nucleus? This is very important. You have steroid drugs, okay, you have opioids and everything which is also steroid, so you should never ever forget the steroid backbone, and I'll tell you how you remember this. It is cyclopentano per hydrophenanthrene nucleus. I know the name is big, but the structure is okay. The structure is also big, but it is simple. Okay, cyclopentano per hydro. Per hydro means saturated, as simple as that. Phenanthrene nucleus. You know what is a phenanthrene, right? 3 benzene rings. It's an isomer of anthracene. So this is your phenanthrene nucleus. Okay. Now cyclopentano, there'll be a cyclopentane ring. See, this is your 4th ring, cyclopentane ring. Per hydro means saturation, phenanthrene. So cyclopentano per hydro phenanthrene nucleus. This is the basic backbone of steroid. You should be able to draw this backbone even when you are in sleep. Okay, you should practice this so many times that anytime someone tells you what is a steroid backbone, you should immediately draw these structures. This has to be perfect. Cyclopentano per hydro phenanthrene nucleus. This is a steroid nucleus. Now, when you talk about numbering of these moieties, okay, the numbering has a specific fashion. Okay, the numbering starts from here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then you start with these two rings. So 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Numbering is very important in steroid backbone. Please do remember this, because later on when you start with chair form of these, it will be very trouble for you. And these positions will talk about SAR, the structure activity relationship, which is the backbone of medicinal chemistry. When you're studying medicinal chemistry of any drug or class or any disease, this is what you are highly expected to know, the structure activity relationship. Okay, and these numbers will help you with SARs, right? Now there are 4 rings you can properly see: ring A, ring B, ring C, and ring D. Okay, ring A and B, the relationship between the rings is cis. Okay, similarly ring C and D, the relationship is again cis, this C and D. Whereas ring B and C, the relationship is trans. Okay, so the relationship in a aglycan moiety ring system is cis, trans, cis. AB cis, BC trans, and again CD cis. This is the relationship between the 4 ring system. Okay, so right now your task is to try drawing 1, 2, 3, 4, this 4 ring system, and give the numbering to these rings. Okay, you have to try that. Chalo, try everyone. I give you 30 seconds. Right? RI, do you feel it easy or tough?
Yes, sir, got it.
Yeah, numbering is very important. Okay, everyone, even if you are not able to do it right now, please do it, because numbering is very important. Okay, so we are talking about the A glycan moiety, right? We are understanding the chemistry of this A glycan, because this is very, very important for your cardiac glycosides. Okay, so I told you this is your A glycan part. Now there is a sugar moiety, I told you, right? There is an A glycan and there is a sugar. So where is the sugar attached? It is attached over here. This is the 3rd position, right? This is the 3rd position. So 3rd position where there is a OH group, and this you know how condensation occurs, right? Sugars are attached by 1,4 glycosidic linkages. So it is attached as 1,4 glycosidic linkages, and this OH is the one which takes part in the condensation reaction for the first glycosidic link, right? So 3rd position pe OH. Okay, this is important, very, very important, because this is where your sugar binds. Okay, this is one thing that you have to think of. Next, there will be methyl groups here and here. Which are these positions? This is 10 and this is 13, right? So methyl group at 10th position and 13th position, very, very important. We are still on A glycan. We have not discussed specific A glycan right now. Okay, we are discussing generalized A glycan structure. So first we drew the backbone, which is cyclopentano per hydro phenanthrene moiety, right? We drew the 4 rings A, B, C, D. Then we numbered the ring. Now we are understanding which all positions, what all substitutions are there in the generalized structure. So OH at 3rd position, very, very important. Methyl group at 10th and 13th position, again important. Okay, now 14th position, this position, another OH. Okay, another OH at the 14th position. हम जितने भी A glycan पढ़ेंगे, okay, how many ever A glycan moiety will be studying, this 3 OH, 14 OH, 10, 13 CH3, CH3 will remain constant. Okay, they will remain as it is. So they are general features. Okay, we have not gone to specific yet. So methyl groups at 10 and 13, OH groups at 3 and 14, okay, is generalized. Now at this position, that is the 17th position, okay, here there is something called as an alpha beta unsaturated lactone. Okay, that is alpha beta unsaturated lactone. Now this lactone can be a 5-member ring or it can be a 6-member ring. Okay, a 5-member or a 6-member. The 5-member lactone will look something like this. Okay, and it is alpha and beta, right? So here and here. Okay, and 6-member, it's a pyrrole kind of structure, right? So 1, 2, sorry, here, alpha beta unsaturated, right? So this is 6-member. Now if there is a 5-member lactone, it is called as a cardinolide. The entire thing, the A glycon with this 5-member lactone, okay, here at 17th position, is called as a cardinolide. Whereas if it is a 6-member ring over here, it is called as a bufadinolide. Okay, if it is a 5-member ring, it is called as cardinolide. If it is a 6-member ring here at the 17th position, it is a bufadinolide. So what you have to remember is at 17th position, there is what? There is an alpha beta unsaturated lactone. Okay, it can be a 5-member or a 6-member ring, cardinal or bufadinolide. All cardinolides come from plant origins, whereas all bufadinolide comes from animal origin. There's only one animal which is called as poisonous toad, from which bufadinolide can be obtained. And when we talk about plant origins, we have the digitalis, right? Digitalis lanata and digitalis purpurea, lanata and purpurea, and you have strophanthus. You have strophanthus, Strophanthus combe and Strophanthus gratis. We'll write the names of these plant origins. Don't worry about this for time being. But understand this, that at 17th position, there is an alpha beta unsaturated lactone. Okay. Here suno. A glycan moiety has 4 rings. Okay. 3rd position, 14th position, OH compulsory. 10th position, 13th position, methyl group compulsory. And 17th position, pe you have an alpha beta unsaturated lactone. This is a generalized A glycan moiety. You should be able to write this any point of time. Okay. Now this A glycan over here, okay, is called as digitoxygenin. The name is a bit scary, but to make it fun, I don't know how many of you used to watch Pokemon or Digimon when you were kids. I used to, on Cartoon Network and Pogo channels. So I used to remember these names and I used to assign these names to a Pokemon. So I used to tell myself digitoxygenin is a Pokemon which has these features. Okay, so this makes learning fun and this makes it interesting and you can remember it that way. So for me, digitoxygenin is a Pokemon which has these features. All right, you can remember it your way. You can think of it as a Ben 10 alien maybe, right? Or you can remember it as a Chota Bheem cartoon, whatever. I think today's kids watch that. So I'm not sure what you watch, but you can remember it in that way. Any name that sounds scary to you, this is how you remember it. All right. So the A glycan with general features 3OH, 14OH, 13 and 10 methyl, 17 lactone, okay, is digitoxygenin. Now there can be additional OH at C12 and C16. 12th position is what? Here. So if there is a OH at the 12th position, that is here, if there is a additional OH, okay, if there is a OH, the A glycan is called as digoxygenin. Okay, first was digitoxy. If you have a additional OH at C12, it is digoxygenin, another Pokemon for me. And if it is at 16, okay, instead of OH, if there is an additional OH at 16th position, okay, it is called as gitoxygenin. So right now I introduced you to 3 A glycan moieties. Okay, one is digitoxygenin, one is digoxygenin, and one is gitoxygenin. Don't get confused between this and this. Many students, they interchange these two. Okay, so remember it in your own way, but remember it in this sequence will help you. Digitoxy, digoxy, and gitoxy. Genin over here, okay, indicates that it is a glycan. This will also help you to know the drug. When you talk about digitalis as a drug, okay, if you're talking about digitalis as a drug, you know what A glycan is here. Digitalis, so it has to be digitoxygenin. The A glycan will be digitoxygenin. When you talk about digoxin as a drug, you know which A glycan is present over here. Which one? Digoxygenin. So it makes it interesting, right? This is why I'm taking it one step at a time. See, I told you earlier that cardiac glycoside has 2 portions. It has a glycan portion, it has a glycan portion. The A glycan portion is a non-sugar steroidal moiety. So this is a steroid backbone. whereas the glycan portion is the sugar. You know the basic structure of sugar, right? Now here we are not talking about the generalized Fischer structure. Okay, we are not talking about this structure. We are talking about this structure: OH, H, OH, H, OH, H, OH, H, H, and CH2OH. This is nothing but alpha D glucose. I'm not even talking about this. You have to write it in the chair form. This. You are expected to know the chair form at this level. Okay, so we'll come to the sugar part afterwards. Right now we are discussing A glycan. So based on this steroid nuclease, first we spoke about the generalized steroid nuclease and the general features. What were the features? There is 3 and 14 position OH. There is 13 and 10 position methyl. There is the alpha beta unsaturated lactone at the 17th position. And the relationship between the rings is AB cis, BC trans, and CD cis. Now, how do you indicate these cis and trans relationships? Okay, fifth position, this fifth position pe, if there is a broken line, if I'm representing this as a broken line, this indicates the relationship between the rings is trans. But I told A and B is cis, so ideally this is how you'll represent the hydrogen at the fifth position. Then I told you B and C is trans, so here it is a solid wedge, so here it has to be broken. So this indicates the relationship between this ring and this ring is trans. Okay, now this here, okay, H and this is cis relationship between 17 and 4, this between ring C and ring T. Okay, so cis, trans, and cis. ये important है because when you study steroids, okay, when we study the steroids in the chair form, okay, you'll understand if it is a cis steroid, this is how you make the steroids generally, okay, side by side. But if it is a trans steroid, okay, the structure changes, the structure flips. Okay, this is why this is important, the 5th position. This 5th position will tell you the relationship if it is cis or trans. Okay, trans will be something like this. Okay, so this is cis, this is trans. So this relationship you can decide based on this, whether it is a broken line or solid line. Okay, I'm not sure if you have studied steroids as of now because the syllabus has changed, but usually steroids was there in SEM 5. When I was studying, it was in SEM 5. Okay, now coming back to our A glycan. बहुत कुछ पढ़ लिया आज, right? We studied lots and lots of things. Refresh करो. Steroid backbone, cyclopentano, perhydrophenanthrene. हमने 3 A glycan पढ़े. Digitoxygenin, Pokemon number 1. Desoxygenin, Pokemon number 2. Getoxygenin, Pokemon number 3. Okay, digitalis drug है, उसके अंदर which A glycan moiety is there? Digitoxygenin. Digoxin drug है, which glycan moiety? A glycan moiety? Digoxygenin. Okay, clear till here? I'm taking just 5-10 minutes extra. I just want to introduce you to these 2 drugs. Okay, so that at least cardiac glycosides you are aware of. Baki ka drugs you'll study it in the next sessions. We also have more sessions planned on, so we'll cover it there. All right, and you'll be also covering it in the different chapters. Now we spoke about A glycan. It's time to study the glycan. Okay, now I told you the glycan is sugar, and in most of the cases this sugar is of 4 types. One is nothing but simple D-glucose. You know the structure of D-glucose. One sugar can be digitoxose. Okay, so you have D-glucose, you have digitoxose, you have rhamnose, and you have cymerose. Okay, alpha D glucose, not alpha, beta. Why beta? Because I told you all glycosides have beta 1 to 4 glycosidic linkage. They are linked with this. So the conformation that you're looking here is beta. Okay, so glucose can be of 4 types: D-glucose, digitoxose, rhamnose, and cymerose. See, these 2 are not very common. Okay, these are present in drugs formed in Strophanthus family. But if you talk about the digitalis family, okay, you'll be encountering D-glucose and digitoxose. Okay, I will draw the structure of all the 4. You should draw it, and then I'll give you the name of the drug, and you can draw the structure very nicely. Okay, so
Sir, I have a doubt.
Yeah,
Sir, we did discuss lactone. Acha, that was not lactose. Okay, sorry.
that was not lactose, that was lactone. There's a difference.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So talking about D-glucose, right? The structure is somewhat like this. Please don't judge me on the structure. I'm having a hard time with this pen. But this is the first position. Okay. First, here is your second position. Okay. Here is your third position, fourth position, fifth position, but there is a CH2 OH. So simple OH. This is your CH2 and OH. Okay. This is your beta D glucose. I'll write this again. This is OH, right? So this is your beta D glucose. Next, coming to beta D digitoxose. Okay, the structure is somewhat like this. Now it's perfect. OH, 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 and CH3. See, now I hope you know the numbering of these, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This is the how you make a a 6-member ring in a chair form, right? Same numbering here also goes in the same way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? So this is beta D digitoxose. Now, what is the difference in digitoxose and cymerose? Beta D cymerose. The only difference in these two structures is instead of OH here, this has OCH3. That is the only difference. So if I talk about the structure, this is how it looks like. OH, here instead of OH you have OCH3, here as it is OH, here as it is CH3. This is your beta D cymerose. And the last one, that is nothing but rhamnose. Okay, uska structure will be something like this. Yeah. So OH, 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 and CH3. Okay, this is the structure of rhamnose. All right. Has everyone written these structures? Fatafat likh lo. Then I'll introduce you to the first drug, digitalis. Done. You can take a screenshot, all of you. Okay. Yeah. So, talking about digitalis lanata, this is the plant, okay, from which we obtain 3 different glycosides called as lantosides A, B, and C. Okay. Now, what is the difference? Lantoside A may the A glycon. Okay. Listen properly. The A glycon is digitoxygenin. You know the structure of digitoxygenin now. We have just discussed it. In case of B, it is gitoxygenin. And in case of lantoside C, this is deoxygenin. So you know these structures. Okay, you know these structures. Talking about the sugar, okay, in case of in case of lantoside A, the sugar is glucose plus 3 acetyl digitoxose plus digitoxose plus digitoxose. अभी डरना नहीं है इससे, ठीक है, बिल्कुल डरना नहीं है. I know it looks like a big name, but you don't have to fear this. That is why we have discussed it, these two things separately. All right. Now I have written this from left end to right end. Okay. So basically when I said ki 3OH is the point of linkage, on that O, this digitoxose will bind. and that is how the structure will progress. So I am drawing the structure of lanreotide A. The structure of lanreotide B and C will be homework for you guys. The sugar remains same in all these three cases, only the A glycon changes. Now what is 3-acetyl digitoxose? Sir, ये तो बताया नहीं आपने. You didn't tell us this, right? This was digitoxose, right? Digitoxose. Now it is 3-acetyl. So here instead of OH, it will be OCO CH3. What did we do? Very simple. We made a modification which is also called as prodrug. So we have made a prodrug. In the body, when it goes, this 3-acetyl group, it gets cleaved, and here again OH comes in picture. The prodrug, you should know by now what prodrug is, right? So it gets activated in the body. In fact, that activation is what will give you digitoxin, that digitalis. What is digitalis? It is nothing but when this glucose and 3-acetyl cleaves, what remains is called as digitalis. Okay. Now, how do you draw this structure? With beta 1,4 glycosidic link. So I'll start with glucose first, right? I'll start with glucose first. Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah. This is the first moiety of glucose. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is your 1. I told you it is 1,4 beta linkage, right? So this. Now, since we are talking about beta, the other sugar, this acetyl sugar will be flipped. It will have a flipped conformation, right? Next, now this is your 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is your 1. Now again, O, O. So here you have 3-acetyl. 1, 2, 3. 3, O, CO, CH3. I'm not fulfilling the OH because you know OH kahan pe kya hai, right? You can fulfill the OH later on. Right now I'm just giving you the backbone, right? 3-acetyl digitoxose is this. Next, we again have one more digitoxose, right? And now again it will be flipped. So it will be somewhat like this. The structure will be somewhat like this. So here, O. Okay, this is another backbone. And then there is another molecule of digitoxose. Now again it will be flipped. O, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. We have got 4 sugars here: glucose, 3-acetyl digitoxose, and digitoxose. 4 glucose. Now this is the point where your A glycon will be binded. Okay, CH3, 14OH, 3OH की जगह पे now the O has formed a glycosidic link. Okay, now we are talking about lanreotide A. Which A glycon we are talking about? Digitoxygenin. So it does not have any additional OH at 12 or 16 position. But what did we miss? We missed the alpha beta unsaturated lactone, right? We missed this lactone. Okay, 5-member lactone cardinolide. So this, okay, this entire thing, I have not fulfilled the OH. Okay, you have to write the OH also. Is the structure of lanreotide A. This is a drug. Okay, in the body, this gets cleaved and this gets cleaved. यहाँ पे OH आ जाएगा. So this, what is this? Digitoxose 3 times digitoxygenin, okay, is called as digitalis. Okay, and what about digoxin then? It is nothing but same thing, digitoxose 3 times digoxygenin. So now if anyone gives you this, this is called as a name. Okay, if anyone gives you this name, you can draw the structure yourself. All right, is it clear, everyone? Yeah. So I think I have already taken 10 minutes extra, so I won't discuss much. There is something I wanted to, okay, yeah, there is something I wanted to point out over here. Okay, I told you SAR is very important in medchem, right? So you should know SAR features. I have already told you all the SAR features. 3' position OH important for sugar binding, so it is important for activity. What does it does? The sugar does nothing but it increases the pharmacokinetic profile. It changes the pharmacokinetic profile, right? So this is important. The cis trans cis relationship. While I'm speaking this, please write it down. Okay, please write it down. Okay, let me do this. The cis trans and cis relationship is very important for activity. Okay, 14th position OH, this is important because it maintains the cis conformation of the C and D. 14th position OH is important because it maintains the cis position of this C and D. Now why you want cis of this is because the lactone, okay, for it to bind at the 17th position, it has to be cis. And this lactone is important for receptor binding. Now which receptor are we talking about? You know digitalis does what? It is a sodium potassium ATPase inhibitor. It is a sodium potassium ATPase inhibitor. So we are talking about this inhibition. So for binding to the receptor and carrying out this inhibitory activity, you need the lactone because it binds with the receptor. Okay, so OH is important for sugar binding, 14 OH important for conformation, cis maintaining the cis conformation. Alpha beta unsaturated thing over here is important. Now it is not, lactone is not important, the alpha beta unsaturation is important. There were various derivatives wherein they maintained the alpha beta unsaturation, but they had a straight chain analog at 17th position, and even this analog was active. In various experiments they tried this. So lactone was not important, but the alpha beta unsaturated thing is important at 17th position. Okay, so I have told you all the SAR points. Okay, next time if when we start with the other drugs, other class of drugs, okay, we'll again have a quick glance at these SAR points. Okay, and last but not the least, I had something for you guys. Is the screen visible to everyone, the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Just a minute. Share screen. PowerPoint. Here. So this is where we stopped, right? This is where we stopped. Mechanism, you can have a quick glance. This is pharmacology part, which is there very nicely given in Tripathi. This is the drugs. So the source of the drug, which glycoside, the name of the glycoside which it contains. Okay, what is the A-glycan composition and what is the sugar moiety? So we discussed this: glucose, 3-acetyl, digitoxose, digitoxose, digitoxose. We discussed this right now, right? So sugar is the same for lanreotide B and C as well. Okay, and purpura glycoside, digitoxygenin, just there is a change of this digitoxose. That's it. Instead of 3-acetyl, it is directly digitoxose. Okay, that's the only change. And you have purpurea A and purpura glycoside B. Then you have strophanthus. It is another plant origin glycoside. Okay, strophanthus gratis and strophanthus combe. So this is the A-glycan, ouabagenin and strophanthidine. You don't have to know the structures of these as of yet, but I'll give you the structures, don't worry. And these are the sugar moieties in this. Okay, so take a screenshot of this, everyone. Right. And whatever drugs we discussed, okay, the other classes of drugs that I told you will come across in different chapters. Okay, these are those drugs. So you can take a quick screenshot of these two. In the next lecture, when we have good time, I'll discuss the structural features, just the structural features of these drugs, so that you'll understand better how to remember it with the name. Now your task for today is two things. Okay, there are two assignments thing for you. One is based on the names of these, okay, the names, this whatever A-glycan and sugar is given, try to draw the structures of at least till here. Okay, till purpura glycoside, try to draw the structures. It will give you a good practice. Okay, this is one. Second, I told you in most of the cases, the name of the medicine or the name of the drug relates to the structural features, right? So identify the structural features of the drugs looking at the names. This is the next assignment. Try to do this, and henceforth I'm 100% sure medchem you will not be afraid of. Okay, so these are the drugs. I hope you have taken a screenshot, and these are some more. Okay, so take a screenshot quick. We stop here right now. Okay, and if there are any doubts, I'm sorry to take extra time of you, but if anyone has any doubt right now, you can definitely speak up. Yeah, anyone, any doubts?
Sir, we are using beta blockers, but the heart has beta 1 receptors, and even that does increase contractility. Why do we do that?
Just a minute. Yeah, tell me.
Uh, Sir, the question is that even the beta blockers act directly on the heart muscles and increase contraction. So why is cardiac glycosides a good idea, but beta? Why do we want to block it? Why don't we, you know? Uh,
Because, yeah, perfect. Good, very good question.
The beta
So,
1 selective we can use. That's why I was
whoever said this is perfectly correct. We use beta 1 selective. Is very correct answer. When I told you we are using beta blockers, the first name that should come to your mind is propranolol. सबसे famous drug. It's a very famous drug. You know, I always feel like laughing when I look at this any of the beta blockers name because it ends with lol. So, and propranolol is by far one of my favorite drugs because I remember its name very precisely. My teacher used to always shout, it is nothing but naphthyl oxy propanol amine. So this is a naphthyl oxy propranolol, and there is isopropyl. I can draw this structure even in my sleep. Okay, so this was by far one of my favorite drugs. Now, when you talk about beta blockers, okay, or when you talk about adrenergic activities, okay, epinephrine, norepinephrine, all these are not selective. And beta, when you talk about beta receptors, these are what? These are adrenergic receptors. And we know adrenergic and cholinergic, they have innervations almost at every part of the body. Okay, there are receptors, there are specific type of subtypes of receptors in all the different locations of the body. Do you want those many side effects or those many receptors to get activated? Of course not. Okay, that is where we look for selective activities, right? And we will any day prefer not touching the nerves. We will any day prefer not touching the sympathetic and parasympathetic thing because they have innervations in almost every section of the body. Okay, we did not talk about vagal nerve stimulation, we did not talk about parasympathetic activity. We can think of that, but these are not selective because the receptors, they differ very minutely, they don't differ much. So it's very difficult to find a selective inhibitor in the first place. Okay, so this is why beta blockers we generally go with beta 1 selective blockers. Okay, I hope that answers your question, whoever asked it.
But sir, beta 1 selective agonist can increase the contractility of the heart. That was
Carvedilol is a beta 1 agonist only, na?
yes, sir.
Carvedilol is a
So if we
beta.
use specifically beta 1 selective agonist,
I'll tell
then
you what it does. So carvedilol is a beta 1 agonist and it's a alpha 1 antagonist. So this alpha 1 effect will help in vasodilation,
yes, sir.
right? Whereas beta 1,
Yes.
now what is, see, your heart has two types of cells. Okay, one is nodal cells and one is contractile cells. Nodal cells is nothing but the one which creates these nodes, your SA nodes and AV nodes, which create the impulse. Whereas contractile cells are nothing but your actin and myosin, which do the work of contraction. Right now, beta, when you this beta 1 receptor, if you stimulate this receptor with an agonist, जिसने भी doubt पूछा है ये सुनो, this is very important. Okay, it leads to GS stimulatory activity, which is your secondary messenger. What this GS does, it goes and activates adenyl cyclase. What this adenyl cyclase does, it increases production of cyclic AMP. Now cyclic AMP is a very important secondary messenger with hell lot of functions. Okay, one of which is activation of protein kinase A. Now what this protein kinase A does in the contractile cells, firstly it opens the voltage gated calcium channels, the L type, on the sarcolemma. Secondly, it will also have a positive effect on phospholambin protein. Now this phospholambin is a protein found on sarcoplasmic reticulum which gushes the calcium inside. Okay, So this, calcium mediated, because what we want is the calcium to remain for a long time, so that the contractility, or the ease with which contraction happens will be better. So if there is more calcium, the actin myosin coupling will happen faster, and that will happen easier. Okay, so we want to increase the concentration of calcium inside the cell. Okay, so one is this L-type calcium channels opening, the facilitating the opening of these voltage gated calcium channels. The other is phospholambin. Now phospholambin does what? It increases the calcium concentration in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so why do we want this? Is because this L-type calcium channels, when they open and when calcium comes in the sarcolemma or sarcoplasm, when calcium comes in sarcoplasm, nothing but imagine karo ye cell hai. This is a cell. There is a mitochondria over here, which is called as, not mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, which is called as sarcoplasmic reticulum. It has specific channels called as phospholambin, which is activated by pKa. Now this phospholambin does what? Intracellular calcium co, it pushes inside the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So it is increasing the concentration here. Why is it doing that? Is because when the L-type calcium channel opens, okay, and calcium increases intracellularly, this calcium goes and binds to, there are two things it does. Okay, one is it binds to, calcium binds to calmodulin, and there are free calcium also. Now these two, calcium calmodulin complex and the free calcium, go and bind to something called as ryanodine receptor 2. This is a receptor which is on the membrane. This does what? When this is activated, it opens up this channel and entire calcium which was inside comes out. Now ye calcium ka concentration was very high in sarcoplasmic reticulum. If entire thing comes out, imagine the force of contraction. So what will happen? Positive inotropy, and this is what was the end goal. So without disturbing any other function, this is what we have achieved. Understood? This is mechanism. This is the entire mechanism how beta thing works. I didn't want to do this because it has lots of messengers, GAS, adenyl cyclase, cyclic AMP, and this is more of pharmacology. This is not medicinal chemistry. This is more of pharmacology, and I was expecting that you already aware of this. So I didn't want to touch this part right now. But since you raised a doubt, it's a very good doubt. It's a very logical doubt. Anyone else may have this. This is your answer. I hope I've cleared it. Whoever asked it. Any other questions?
Sir, why is the structure so big, and why does it not change throughout? Because it can.
Structure of what?
Cardiac glycocytes, sir.
Why the structure is so big, and
Why does it not change or get metabolized very easily? So because it's so big.
it does change, it does get metabolized. See, medicinal chemistry also talks about ADME, absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. Absorption may who helps? Sugar moieties help, right? Because there are so many sugars and there are OH groups, they help in absorption. And distribution, again, it depends on the steroid backbone, whether it will be plasma protein bound or whether it will not be plasma protein bound. Now metabolism may functional groups help. This functional groups, OH, right? These will help in metabolism. If you talk about digoxin, it easily gets excreted via urinary excretion, right? Whereas digitalis is basically metabolized. Also, we spoke about how digitalis is formed in the first place. The glucose has to be cleaved, the acetyl has to be cleaved. That is when digitalis becomes active. So this is what? This is metabolism, right? Now coming to your another point, why the structure does not change? Because it is a backbone. See, when you talk about conformation of molecules, why this molecule aisa nahi rehta body ke andar. If you are thinking that molecule is like this in the body, it is not. That is why you draw this type of conformation, the chair form. We know 6-member rings are more stable in the chair form. When you draw these type of structures, you'll understand that the strain on the molecule is very less. And if the strain is less, the molecule will remain like that. Energy is less, it will remain like that. Another important point, due to this cis trans cis conformation, the molecule gets a U shape, and this U shape is required for the receptor binding. So once it binds to receptor, it binds via bonds. There are amino acid which interacts. There are ionic bonds and covalent bonds and stuff like that. So since it is binding to the receptor via bonds, it gets increased flexibility, increased stability. Why will it change? Understood? See,
Yes, sir.
if this is the query, peptides, if you see, okay, peptides, there are peptide drugs in the market. Lots and lots of peptide drugs are there in the market. They are called as macromolecules. You cannot draw a structure of a peptide. Okay, कभी try structure search करो किसी peptide का, you cannot draw it because it is such bulk and you don't even study that, right? But still it is a drug. उसका structure change नहीं होता.
But sir, that I can understand that because it's given IV and you're not expecting for it to stay in the body for long or act for long.
No drug stays in the body for longer. I told you these glycosides, they are last therapy. They are only used in extreme cases. Q, because they have a very low therapeutic index.
But sir, they accumulate also.
They accumulate. That's what I'm saying. See, we don't use digitalis at all today. In the severe case also we use digoxin. Why? Digitalis plasma protein binding is 90 to 95%. Okay, imagine the plasma binding. So if you administer any drug, because I told you most of the situations are secondary. If you give drugs which are also plasma bound and which will compete with digitalis, okay, what the drug will do, it will release the protein from here and free digitalis will be there in the blood. And we know the therapeutic index is very less. That is why we have completely stopped digitalis today. Digoxin plasma protein binding is 20 to 25% or 30%, not more than that. So even in very worst situations when we have to give, we give this. We never give this. You can search this. You can search this anywhere. You can ask any doctor also. So this is what is being followed. ये बहुत बड़ा problem है therapeutic index. But since we have so many drugs already, people are not. There is no research happening on this, these days. Because we have ACE inhibitors, we have angiotensin receptor blockers, which are very good drugs. You can use it in class 1, class 2, class 3. And class 4 ke liye, along with digoxin, you have dobutamine also. So we have an alternative dobutamine, so it's fine. Okay. I told you why we give spironolactone in case of digitalis is because it is sodium potassium ATPase inhibitor. So what happens is sodium remains inside, potassium is excreted. So the body can have hypokalemia. That is why you have sodium sparing diuretics. So that toxicity wala part, one of the toxicity will be hypokalemia, will be taken care of by these diuretics, potassium sparing diuretics. If you talk about the other diuretics, the high ceiling and the thiazide like, they have a side effect, which is they excretion of potassium. So we don't want that because already sodium potassium ATPase inhibit hua hai. We don't want that. So that is why digitalis, if you are giving digoxin, if you are giving cardiac glycoside, it's always preferred to give spironolactone and eplerenone, or you should balance it with diet. If you don't want to give another drug, balance it with diet, potassium diet.
So you were also going to discuss why potassium and sodium have such opposing effects on blood volume.
Sorry.
So you were also going to discuss why potassium and calcium have such opposing effects on blood volume.
I did not understand your question. Your voice is breaking.
Sir, I was saying that sodium is always related with blood volume, but potassium not so much. Why is it that?
Acha. For that, you should read something about action potentials. Okay? You read karo ek bar pharmacology wale book mein, and if still you have this query, you get it to me. I'll be happy to solve it. Okay? Just read it once. I'm sure you'll get it. Okay?
I am actually aware of action potentials, but wo blood volume se kaise related hai, I can never see.
Because sodium carries water, potassium does not. Sodium has the ability to carry water with it, but potassium does not have that ability.
Okay, that was my point. Why is it that?
See, it's a natural property of the element. Now you cannot say why my name is Suraj because my parents kept it. I cannot question that. It's a property, right?
Thank you so much, sir. It was a really nice lecture.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think, guys, we should wind up. Thank you for being so patient with the extra time also. And I hope to see you guys next time with much more fun and much more drugs. And the assignment that I've given to you, please try it. It will help you a lot. Okay. So thank you so much. Over to you, Preetam.
Thank you so much, sir.
Hi guys, we will be sharing the recording of this lecture and also a feedback form. Do fill it and let us know. Also, I will be sharing the timetable for our next lecture with you all guys. So I hope you understood the lecture.
Yes, ma'am, it was awesome.
Yes, we did.
Yes, ma'am, it was amazing.
Okay, great. So let's wind up. Thank you, Suraj. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you, sir.
Bye.
All the
Thank
best. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.